I got into naturopathic medicine or natural medicine or alternative medicine out of my own desperation. A lot of you guys know my story, but I'll just give you 2 minutes if you don't. I went into the Marine Corps at 19. I got a vaccine before special deployment. Quickly after, I developed an abscess on my butt, kind of inside my groin area. That turned out to be the start of a fistula. A fistula is a tract from your intestine to the outside of your skin. That was my first autoimmune disease symptom. I had a surgery for that, very painful, and I was left with a lot of pain after that surgery. They scheduled me for more surgery. Instead, I got out. Started going to college and just got worse and worse over the years. Graduated from Stony Brook, which I loved and appreciated. But by the end of that, I was pretty sick. Now, for me, being sick was having to go to the bathroom at my worst 30, 40 times a day, 20 times at night. Didn't sleep through a night for 4 or 5 years. So that was my experience. So finally, after suffering through a lot of conventional medicine, I said, let me go to the best guy. So it's a fancy Park Avenue office with leather-bound volumes and mahogany desk. He did a 2-minute exam, told me to meet him back in his office. And he said, I got a cure for you. And I'm like, well, finally, after I was probably 26, 27 now, 7 years of that, this guy's got a cure for me. So he sat me down. I was with my new wife at the time. And he said, I'm going to cut out your colon. I'm going to put you on lifelong drugs. Now, maybe for someone that would have been a good alternative. For me, it wasn't. See, I never had a fear of death. When I was 8 years old, I had meningitis and I had an out-of-body experience. And since that time, I remember a couple things. I never had any fear of death. And I don't know how to quite phrase this, but everyone looked beautiful to me. Like when I came out of that experience, people looked beautiful to me. And I had a real intuitive feeling about what people were thinking or feeling. Those were all things very clear to me at 8. So I didn't want to do that. That wasn't the life that I wanted. For the 7 years I've been suffering, I'd seen people with that kind of thing, and that wasn't a life I wanted to live. So I said, okay, we're not doing that. I turned around and walked out, and he shouted out at me as I was walking down the hall, you'll be dead in 6 months. Which was okay with me, if that was the way to go. But instead I went to my library, Port Jeff Library. I was born and raised in Port Jeff, still live there now. And I looked up alternative and medicine. Now, there was no internet, just the card catalog. Looked at a 1-paragraph article in some magazine about naturopathic doctors. Go to a 4-year medical school, learn everything Western and everything natural. Hell, I got nothing to lose at this point. None in New York State at the time. Drove 3 hours each way to Connecticut. Doctor didn't help me very much, but he believed one thing. He believed that I could heal. Now, that was the first doctor in 7, 8 years that believed that. It planted a seed inside of me. Like, I can heal from this. After a year of working with him, not getting better, I said, I better go figure out how to heal myself, because this isn't working. So I went to naturopathic school for 4 years. 16-hour days. By the time I graduated, I was pretty much just as sick as when I went in. But when I graduated, I started seeing people. They started teaching me. You guys started teaching me. You started teaching me. So through all the people I've seen, they've taught me how to get myself better. And then, of course, I get to pass it back to someone else. So that's my story, and this is my 25th or 26th year seeing people. I feel more excited about it today than I did 20 years ago, and hopefully I'll do it for another 25 years. You know, that's it. But you can heal. We have to figure out the puzzle pieces sometimes. You don't have to heal. There's no failure. We all kind of reach the same finish line. But if you can solve the puzzle, it's kind of fun to try and do that together. And that's what I kind of do. I try and help solve puzzles. You see, I say health philosopher now. My son is graduating with his degree in philosophy and economics from Stony Brook. So I've experienced his 4 years of philosophy education. And I realize it's okay not to know. It's okay to not know that you don't know. We're just trying to solve these puzzles together. And he has taught me so much. So it's kind of like in honor of him. So we're going to talk about some stuff that you don't get to hear about every day. Don't try and memorize it. You guys can have a copy of the slides. I'll print up a PDF. Anyone who emails, you can have the whole PDF. You don't have to write anything down. Just relax. It's 45 minutes. We're gonna talk through. We should be done here by 12. You can get up. You can go to the bathroom. You should have space to move around. This is a talk for you. So this is all taken as a story, please. Once upon a time, I'm going to tell you a story about some stuff. Don't run out and do anything. Check with your doctor if you have a doctor. But I'm going to give you a story about some medical stuff. Your problem is you're a Neanderthal. I already told you were Viking. That's part of the problem. You're also here because you're Neanderthal. Let me explain. This is my gene variants. Now they've isolated the Neanderthal genes in people. Nordic people, Europeans, which is why you're all Europeans sitting here. Most of you. Lupus, cirrhosis, Crohn's disease, eye disc problems, smoking, diabetes, depression, cystitis, skin cancer, vitamin deficiencies. This is basically my family. Why? Because these Neanderthal genes are very immunologically aggressive. So they will make you inflammatory to things that other people are not inflammatory to. Now those genes survived. There's a reason they survived, because it helped your ancestors survive. Now in this environment, they're detrimental. You know, unless the apocalypse happens, then they'll be beneficial again. But right now, we're kind of experiencing the apocalypse inside us. Those same genes that are made to destroy the environment and clear the way for you, you now internalize and you attack your own microbiome, your own cells, your own DNA. Anyway, we completely don't understand these people. That's what this study says. We were comparing apples and oranges. They were just people, just slightly different. Increases risk of depression. And they did give us virus-fighting genes, and they shared the genes for fighting they gave us viruses, and they gave us the genes for fighting those viruses. These genes, even though it's only 2, 3, 4%, they're very key genes they're like controlling genes. So even though there's only, I don't know, what would we say, 1% of the people that are CEOs of their company, they have a very strong influence on the company. So these genes are CEO genes. In fact, skin tone, height, hair color, sleeping pattern, mood, smoking status. Hyperimmunity, this kind of explains, but basically it's bacteria, fungi, and parasites. So again, this is why in difficult cases I like to test mold. I'm going to introduce different colleagues that are in the audience. This is from one of my colleagues that always encourages testing of mold, because if you have mold in your system, you're going to be hyper-reactive to it because of these genes. And you're all here because you have these genes. That's what brings you here. Someone else is playing softball somewhere. He doesn't have these genes, you know? These Neanderthals also had a tremendous amount of parasites, okay? 10 times more than the average Homo sapien. So, they survived for 400,000 years. So they weren't pathologically affected with hookworms. Their normal population of hookworms was 10 times ours. In fact, we're told that people with these parasites, they're just generalizing. They don't know my people. My people wouldn't be. But the average person would be sick. And yet they survived for 400 years. What do these genes do? Okay? One is a major clotting gene. Anyone think there's any problem with clotting in this society? What is it, the #1 cause of death as heart disease, disability, strokes. Okay, that's your Neanderthal genes causing that. Okay? So, now, what's the conclusion? If you have Neanderthal genes that are hyperactive immunologically for clotting, you better have Neanderthal parasite levels to compensate for that. If you don't, this clotting, strokes, etc., or this hyperautoimmunity will run out of control. And again, this is just something about Neanderthal genes and the inflammation. Now, what do we know about hookworms? Worming inhibits clotting. Okay? They don't do it for you. They do it because they don't want your blood to clot while they're drinking their 1 drop a day. Okay? They do it for themselves. But in doing that, they keep your blood flowing. So anyone with a high risk of stroke, clotting disorder, they should be on hookworms. You'll be very sick. Again, what will you be sick with? Inflammatory diseases, such as anxiety, depression, lupus, Crohn's, colitis, arthritis, or clotting diseases such as strokes and heart attacks. Now, the question is very interesting, well, interesting to me. What can we do to activate these Neanderthal genes? They just figured out that these guys boiled all their food. It's an interesting byproduct of chemistry that if you boil water, the bag you're heating it never gets hotter than the water. So you can boil water in a skin or bark. So these guys all boiled their food, the Neanderthals. So one thing we learn in naturopathic school, if we're healing someone's system, we kind of stick to soups and stews. Not only that, but my other son asked me the same question I was thinking was, well, what about what's in the bark and the skins? Maybe we were getting that all the time. And that's what we need to downregulate our Neanderthal genes. Get them back in control. Well, that might be the subject for next year's lecture. I don't know how to do that, but I'm thinking about it. All right. Anyway, Europeans have these genes mostly. Problem is, you're also a gorilla and a monkey. Now, obviously, we're talking genetically, not spiritually, not, but we can learn from these guys because these are our relatives. What do we know about them? Gorillas are 98% similar to humans, much more similar than previously thought. Some things apply to their health that apply to our health. Animals share hookworms. So in the forest, what they find is that the apes and the human beings that live there will share their hookworm populations. That's how prevalent these things were in nature. You couldn't not get them. Here you can't get them. Therapeutic infections, what they do, if monkeys have chronic diarrhea, colitis, Crohn's, idiopathic diarrhea, what do? They give them worms. What happens? 4 out of 5 of them get better. Okay? This is whipworms. 4 out of 5 of them get better from their chronic diarrhea. How many people have IBS in this country? Millions and millions. Less bacteria attached to their intestinal wall with hookworms. Why? Because the hookworms are smart. We're going to talk more about hookworms. The gut bacteria became close to normal, and they reduced the immune response against the intestinal bacteria. Well, that's the problem with us. We overreact to things. Everyone's exposed to Lyme. Is there anyone that has never been bitten by a tick in the audience, even as a kid? Okay, no hands are up. One hand. Maybe you need a tick bite, I don't know. Anyway, we all have tick-transmitted disease. There's not just Lyme's and tick. There's hundreds of different bacteria. This is a different scale. A tick is a skyscraper for bacteria. Every floor has 100,000 bacteria. So you're supposed to leave it alone. We hyperreact to it. By trying to chase it, that's when we get the inflammatory symptoms. It'll come into a steady state with our body, but unless you don't leave it alone. All right, let me talk to you about cancer. I haven't been talking about cancer the last couple of years because I've been too chicken, but I got over my chicken state. There's things you need to know. Okay, 1 out of 3 of us will have some kind of cancer. Not my patients, but you are inflammatory and you are at risk. Let's talk about what to do if that ever comes up. It's not a death sentence, believe it or not. It's not even a suffering sentence. It's just an opportunity to solve a puzzle. First of all, 100 years ago, these guys came up with this theory, which never, in my experience, has been disproven. It's the trophoblast theory of cancer. Basically, let me see if I have one slide that goes. Okay, this is kind of not the first slide. But basically, cancer cells are normal cells. We have 3 things we do. We grow very rapidly as babies. We recover from wounds, and we get cancer. Those cells are all rapidly growing, rapidly dividing. These guys said the same kind of cells. And again, I've never seen it proven differently. This cell is called the trophoblast, and it's got a coating on it, okay, that protects it from the immune system. Forget what it's called, it doesn't matter. Enzymes can break down the protein code of this cell. In fact, that's what happens when a baby stops rapidly dividing at 8 weeks. It's because the pancreas starts working, releases enzymes into the circulation, and these cells get destroyed. That's the enzyme theory of treating cancer. Trophoblast, wound healing, baby growth, and cancer. Don't worry about this stuff. This is just if you get a copy of the slides, you can read it. So, it's not abnormal. What's abnormal is you're not killing it. The body has mechanisms to kill it, but you're not using them. Anyway, HCG, these cells release HCG, that's the pregnancy test, but it also can be used to screen women for cancer, and this explains all that. So, what do they do? Now, B17 Laetrile, I remember hearing about in the 70s when I was a kid. It took me 25 years of practice to open my mind to this. Can you believe that? That's how brainwashed I was. Anyway, these guys were solving this stuff decades ago. Great book, World Without Cancer. This is the doctor who was the main proponent of it. I think you can see a lot from pictures. You can get a feeling for people. This guy went to jail because he believed in Laetrile that much. Was harassed his entire professional life. The FDA sued him in multiple states at the same time, so he couldn't defend himself, and spent a year in prison for his beliefs before he went to Mexico. So you could say, oh, he's a quack. But I think the world would need more quacks like that. This is the author of the book, J. Edward Griffin. These 2 guys were against Laetrile. They were both paid by the cigarette companies to promote smoking. This guy said a pack a day keeps the doctor away. Really. Really. And this was not in 1930. This was in the 60s, 70s, when this stuff was known. Both died of smoking-related causes. One guy died in his bed from burning to death smoking. The other guy had lung cancer. Anyway, these 2 guys were responsible for the whole war against Laetrile, which is vitamin B17. And they did some study in 53, inaccurate. In 63, the California Department of Health approved the study. But when they reviewed this study later, it was found to be totally fudged. It was a negative study for Laetrile. So basically what happens is the cancer cells have different enzymes than a healthy cell. Vitamin B17 has 4 parts. When it hits a cancer cell, it's broken this way. When it's broken that way, it releases 2 things. A reactive oxygen species and cyanide. It's extremely toxic. So it's broken that way by this beta-glucadase. It's got 100 times concentration that a healthy cell has. These 2 things kill cancer together 200 times stronger than either of them alone. Benzaldehyde and cyanide. When this hits a healthy cell, when it hits a healthy cell, it's cleaved like this. Then it releases 2 things, vitamin B12 and another nutrient. So the cancer cell And the healthy cell handled this chemical very differently. To one it's toxic, to one it's healthy. Isn't that fascinating? I mean, why didn't I learn this? You know, I have no idea. And why it took me so long to learn. This you can't use in the US, vitamin B17 or Laetrile. So you can't fight your cancer in the US. You can't. Every other country you can use it. You can go to Brazil, you can go to Mexico, you can go to Canada. If you have cancer, you have to have B17. This Japanese doctor, so, you know, he was 80 or whatever, 70 or 80 in the 70s. He did 5 years of studies. Okay, at the end, they did like a 10th study. They took, instead of ruling out the control group, they gave rats too much Laetrile, too little Laetrile, and just the right amount. Well, instead of saying how the ones with the right amount did, which he said was the best cancer response he'd seen to any drug, they combined them all, including the ones without enough. And that's the study they released and said it doesn't work. They had a big news conference. This is your, I don't know which medical center it was. I don't want to say Sloan Kettering or something. But this is one of your, oh, let's go there places. You know, let's get the best. Anyway, they had a big news conference to say it didn't work. He was in the audience. One of the reporters asked him, he's like, it works, I stand by my work. You know, there are people like that. Anyway, it exists in the pits of apricots, cherries, and peaches. I had no idea there was a seed inside an apricot pit. Did anyone know that? No one knows it. Inside an apricot, the pit, the big thing, you crack it open and there's a seed in there. That seed is filled with Laetrile, B17. These people that eat the most of that are the Hunzas. There's no cancer in this culture. And the people live to 80 or 90, health, fit. They eat 40 per day. So when you read about, oh, apricot seeds have cyanide, they'll kill you and whatever, it's just not true. See, I never talked about this before, right? So I try to make it a little different each year. Cancer cells have this enzyme, healthy cells have this enzyme. They basically just cleave things differently. Again, this is what I wanted to start with. The cell, healing baby, and cancer all seem to be the same kind of cells. Yeah, you have the apricot, you got the big pit thing, and there's a seed in there. I wanted to bring some today and give it to you. But anyway, you can just order them. That's where I order mine from. I eat like 10 a day. They're a little bitter, but I kind of like bitter. Right? Do you like them? All right, so I think it's really important to get this vitamin in your system. Let's be preventative, you know? So let's eat these now and get this in our system. Apricot powder. Again, you don't have to do this. I can send this to you. Healthy diet's not enough. There was Adele Davis in the 70s, I think. She was a nutritionist and clean living person. She corresponded with the author, and the author said to her, listen, I know you're clean living, and I get it, but you have to include this B17. And she wrote back to him saying, no, cancer is multifactorial, and it's environmental, and you're limiting yourself to B17. And he wrote back, he's like, no, when you look at the studies, it doesn't matter the environment. If you don't have this vitamin, you're going to get sick. She told him he was crazy. A year later, she was dead from cancer. So I definitely have seen that, where healthy people that are making good choices are missing a key piece of information in their health. And I think for us, this is very key. We should definitely include a couple of these seeds per day. Again, that's just explaining what's happening. Vitamin B15 is also found in these seeds. Again, not promoted here, not banned like B17 is, but studied in Europe for years. Russians had a 200-page report in the 70s. Basically, if you give it to rats, they can swim forever. If you don't give it to them, they drown. I mean, they used it on all their Russian athletes in the 70s and 80s. And those guys were pretty good. They were doing other stuff too, but they definitely used this. Russian Academy of Science, 205-page report. Like, it's just missing information. And luckily, it's in the same seeds. All right, so let's talk about the enzymatic approach to cancer. And by the way, if you ever get cancer, you should do all of this. Cancer cells and our immune system white blood cells both have a negative charge. So they push each other away like two ends of a magnet. We're doing good. We're going to get that. That's because this cancer cell has a coating on it. If you take enzymes, you can break down that coating. Then that changes it to a positive charge, and then the white blood cell wants to attack it. Yeah, just kind of saying the same thing. Then 2004 proof. This is an NIH study. Pancreatic enzyme improved pancreatic cancer in mice. Why would you not do this? I mean, the problem, I know several oncologists, and I consider them good people, and they've sent people to me, they're not closed-minded, but they can't do Laetrile. They can't recommend enzymes. It's not in their scope of practice. It's not in their standard of care. And not only that, no one practices by themselves anymore. So then you're going to prescribe this, they're going to see the next person the next week, and the person's going to call you up and say, what are you doing with John Smith? That's ridiculous. So it doesn't happen. And that's why most people don't get better. 2019, they did the same frickin' enzyme study again. Concluded that proteolytic enzyme is a valuable strategy to suppress solid pancreatic tumors, one of the most difficult cancers to cure. Research done in Spain, of course, because we can't do it here, I guess. So this is about me and my own ego. This is Dr. Gonzalez, who's dead now. You know, died of a heart attack outside his front door. Perfect state of health otherwise. He was treating cancer when I remember like just starting in practice. And I had judgmental attitude. I'm like, oh, that guy who just does the enzymes. I didn't really understand any of this till I researched it this year. So if I can be closed-minded, 25 years seeing people as a naturopathic doctor, alternative medicine and such, most average people, they don't have a chance. And so that's kind of why I want to talk to you about it today. Like, the guy is a hero. And when you read about him online, they talk about him as this quack. The guy wasn't a quack. Every person that'll write something negative, you'll see someone under it comment, yeah, you know what? He's a quack that cured my metastatic liver cancer 20 years ago. You know, but like, I want to be more open-minded and more loving and appreciative of people in my life. And I've known about him. I should have stopped by his office and said hi. Anyway, just these heroes that just push through the resistance of the conventional system. You know, Alan Watts, who's a philosopher who I like, if you ever listen to any YouTube videos, just like he says some things that are just perfect statements. And institutions exist to serve the institution is one of the statements. And it's just so true on so many levels. So medicine exists to serve the institution of medicine, not the patient. This is a perfect example of it. Anyway, promoted, helped thousands and thousands of people. And I just wanted to just give my appreciation to him. Anyway, so here's some Mexican cancer clinic options. They have in one clinic, they have all this stuff. They have Laetrile, they have oxygen therapies, they have, and like, you know, you don't have to go to the best German clinic. That's if you want clean. If you're a clean freak, go to the German clinic. I would go to the dirtiest clinic because, you know what? Bacteria doesn't make you sick. I'd go to the cheapest clinic in Mexico or Brazil if this came up for me. Go for 3 weeks, have them pump you full of Laetrile, whatever else they have to offer, come on back. Who's racing around over there? This is another cancer medicine. It's a $7 a week worm medicine that dogs use. But there's a guy on the internet, he's a very interesting guy. Basically, he was small cell lung cancer, which is a death sentence. He had like 6 months. He started taking this and cannabis, which we're going to talk about. And Basically, it makes the cancer cells very weak. And $7 a week. And he cured a small cell lung cancer, which is theoretically incurable. Anyway, there's a lot of good stuff out there. This is a study they did on mice, and they found doing that drug with vitamins, there was no cancer growth. Okay, let's talk about marijuana. I know some of you are very open-minded about it. I know some of you, maybe on the other side of my age, are a little bit closed-minded about it. So I want to kind of blow your mind open here. This is the marijuana plant. I mean, I went to naturopathic school. We studied herbs, and we didn't learn about marijuana. That's how closed-minded our society is, that the open-minded school doesn't even teach you about it. My patients taught me about this. It's beautiful. All these, this is the oils that have the components in it that are vitamin M. Okay, this is vitamin M. So, once you're exposed to it and you know, this is how it feels, you'll know when your body needs it. Just like you know if you need vitamin C. Just like if you know if you need vitamin D. Symptoms of deficiency of vitamin M. Insomnia, anxiety, depression, inflammation, autoimmune diseases, and cancer. How do I know this? I had a guy come into me. He was a previous pitcher in his baseball league. Always had a sore elbow. Just dealt with it. We all have sore stuff. He smoked cannabis at night to go to sleep for 20 years. Got a new job. Couldn't smoke cannabis. Went off it. 3 months later, he had a tumor in his elbow. They had to take his arm. I know that cancer can be controlled with cannabis. I've seen it. If you have cancer, you need to use cannabis. There's just no question. You need to use Laetrile, you need to use enzymes, and you need to use cannabis. The whole flower is best. Studies show it. The most symptom relief is based on the whole flower. Now, of course, what does New York State ban? The whole flower. I don't know what to tell you to do about these things. I guess you can call your state senator or assembly person, call Department of Health, but it's just ridiculous. You don't have to vape anything. You can just smoke the dry flower, like they've been doing for 50,000 years. All these different things, oh, it'll suppress your testosterone, suppress your fertility. No, what they found, it makes you more fertile. Creates more sperm. Maybe this was the evolutionary advantage. 3 things they find together: human beings and human hookworms, human beings and dogs. Dogs don't exist without humans. Human beings and cannabis. That flower does not exist without human cultivation. Better sperm than do the special chemical called the chill the fig out chemical. This is a study of cannabis and symptom relief. Overall, this is improvement in symptoms. The one that crashed down, that was high concentration of cannabinoids, which means it wasn't a flower. It was a chemical concentration of THC or CBD. There's like 50 different oils in a cannabis plant. Whole THC is the best. And again, between 10 and 19%, you see as you get into the higher concentration stuff, which would be extracts. Like they'd have to pull the THC out by itself. It doesn't work as well. Guess what? Mother Nature knows what she's doing. What is cannabis? It's cannabinoids, it's terpenes, and it's flavonoids. It's a bunch of stuff that's really good for you. Now, this is flower. And flower has weird names. Okay? The kind of flower that works best for you is going to vary with each individual. Now, in this state, it's very hard to figure out because you can't even, according to New York State, you can't even sell the flower as its particular thing. Like when I ask them, what's in this vape pen, the place that sold it can't even tell me. But in licensed states is where you could figure that out. Massachusetts is licensed, and this is from a Massachusetts website. Not even licensed, it's recreational, I should say. Strange names, don't let that throw you. They each have a little bit different balance of those three things we talked about before. They keep trying to prove that marijuana is bad for you. I don't know who. Maybe someone wants to sell you a drug instead of let you smoke this for $15. They'd rather sell you a $500 drug, maybe. Anyway, every time they try and study it, it works better than nothing at all. So marijuana study finds no link between marijuana and lung cancer. And of course, they were surprised to the researchers. So they were looking for a problem. They can't find it. In fact, one study found that people had lower lung cancer if they smoked cannabis than if they'd never smoked at all. All right. Not linked with lung damage. Anti-tumor effects for sure. This is an anti-cancer substance. This is an anti-tumor substance. This is an anti-inflammatory substance. And it makes you feel really good. So what's the problem? Get your medical marijuana card. I use quickmedcards.com. People have gone there. It's been very professional, very quick. I think it's like $150. Marijuana is not recreational in New York State, and flower is not legal. So get your med card, even, so you're covered. And even if you have a vape pen you picked up from the pharmacy, put it in your trunk and lock it, okay? We have the highest prison population in the U.S. of any country in the world. Can you believe that? More than Russia, more than China, more than countries where people are controlled. So we have to re-look at ourselves and be super cautious in anything we do. Make sure everything we do is legal, and make sure you know how to handle it if anyone asks you any questions. Which is, never say anything to anyone about anything. Parents tell your kids, kids tell your friends. If you're stopped for anything ever, and you're asked questions, you say, I do not answer questions, I want to talk to my attorney. That makes you difficult, and you want to be difficult in some situations. Let's talk about some hookworms. We got 10 minutes, come on. Hang in there. Hookworm is the most intelligent thing you can put in your body. And I mean that in both ways. It's intelligent to do it, and that worm is intelligent. Basically I just told my worms, I'm fat, I want to lose 30 pounds prior to my talk. That was 6 weeks ago. I lost 30 pounds. I went from 225 to 195.
Like for real?
Yeah. Yeah, Someone hasn't seen me recently.
Yeah.
For real. Yeah. Anyone could vouch for it. Anyone? And I feel the best as I had in my entire life. Now I can still screw myself up, and we'll talk about foods like I'll talk about when I get to the foods, because I still make mistakes. Anyway, plants and humans, we have a lot in common. Okay. So what happened? The plant grows in soil. It has worms. We take our soil and we roll it up inside us. Your intestine is your ecosystem. That's your soil. If you don't have worms in that soil, you won't have the proper bacteria in that soil. That'll make you hyper-inflammatory. So we took us and we rolled the soil up and we put it in our body so we can carry it with us. Or they can carry themselves around. Never know who's in charge. This is wormy. I realize he looks a little bit like a menorah there. Well, he may be. You don't know. But anyway, I try not to make you guys mostly know about worms now. So I'm kind of fine-tuning things now. Don't make him do too much. He can help you with allergens. He can help you with healing. He can help you with sleep. He can help you with hormones. If you make him do everything, he's not going to be as effective. So yeah, I can have a slice of pizza now. But if I have 3 slices of pizza a day, I'm going to be 225 pounds. Wormy can't help me with that. He can help me from being reactive to it, But I don't really want that. I want to be as, I got to answer to you guys, so I got to be healthy and fit, So when you have your worms, make sure you prioritize what you want them to do. Calms the immune system. Basically, this is just a slide that shows you the calming effects on certain chemicals. Every worm is different, so you can't judge the reactions to one type of worm as you would to hookworm or whipworm. Hookworms can live for decades, I always tell you guys that. This is about dog worms, same thing, dogs have worms too. The puppy gets the worms from the milk. So that's how one mammal handles getting their puppies' worms. I never dewormed my dogs. They're both 15 years old. They're like 200 years old, human.
And dogs are getting autoimmune disease now because they deworm them.
Dogs are getting autoimmune diseases now because,
People have dogs with autoimmune disease.
I mean, at some point, we're going to put 2 and 2 together, unless it doesn't pay to put 2 and 2 together, in which case we may never put 2. We can do it. They create tolerance. This is just studies. They're trying to use products from hookworms as drugs now, but basically they use them to reduce inflammation. Decreases multiple sclerosis. This is my sister. She had MS since 30. We've managed it for like 20 years with natural medicine, natural hormones, homeopathy, and such. At 50, she started having breakthrough dizziness. I said, Katie, just throw these hookworms on. That was like 5 years ago when I was just screwing around. And I haven't heard dizzy in 5 years. Treat inflammation. Billion years they've been here. 2017 study, hookworms in particular have been shown to ameliorate chronic inflammation. Worms help us heal disease. They release a chemical that helps do the same thing a drug does. So he's got a bunch of tools. We can help him by giving him the right things to work with. He wants to work for us. The right probiotics, the right vitamins, the right minimal proteins and amino acids. That's what we can figure out together. This is some hookworm signs. They like to do interesting things. That's the Superman worm. That I don't know what it is. Game of chance worm. But that's it. People's feet aren't falling off. I don't know what you guys are seeing on the interwebs. Okay, this is Somalia or something. People have worms. Helminth infections during pregnancy. One thing they do is, this is kind of a little more complicated, but that's just worms. Well, basically what they studied was, they studied kids giving them vaccines when the moms had hookworms. And what they found was there was less inflammatory reactive response to the vaccine the more hookworms the mom had. So basically, that was programming the baby not to be responsive. For us, with our kids and the people we deal with, they're hyperinflammatory already. So what a great side effect of having worms. Anyway, for those of you that don't know, autoimmune disease only exists where the Vikings came. Basically, the red is the hot spot for autoimmune. To the US, Canada, obviously these people came down here. Some of them had to get away. And then Australia's, the people that are getting diagnosed are all white people with Viking heritage. That's because these genes predominate in those people. Nothing more, nothing less. This is where the worms are. So where the worms are, you don't see autoimmune disease. Where the worms aren't, you do see it. So something's going on there. This is hotspots for Alzheimer's, same map. Basically, Parkinson's starts in the gut. Vikings and inflammatory lung disease. Basically, the Vikings were filled with all different kinds of worms. They even had worms in their lungs. So the body developed this genetic thing to make the lungs more reactive, more inflammatory to control the worms. The worms, in response, would calm the immune system down. So they were in this kind of battle. Now we took the worms away. So the hyperinflammatory lungs go unchecked. That's people that smoke and develop emphysema or chronic obstructive lung disease. Is they're hyperreactors that are not being controlled by the lungworm that their ancestors had. Okay, let's talk about your brain. The more inflammation, the less good your brain works because you trigger the amygdala. The amygdala is your fight or flight response. The more that's triggered, the less you can think well. Worms help turn that inflammation down and make you think better. That's a common report of people that come in. I don't know where they're getting these worms, but they come in and want to talk to me about their worms. And they often report how much better their brains work. I would never have thought thinking to write a 300-page book before my own hookworms. So basically it's this. You have life here, things that can't change. Kids, business, taxes, your job, your family, whatever's stressing you. If your amygdala is activated, it pulls you down, and all those things feel like they're on top of you, stressing you out. The hookworm, by dropping the inflammatory state, allows you to kind of get up above them. So you go from a fear state to a joy state. And I certainly experienced that with my first hookworm dose. I was just learning. I had a lot of stresses. The reason I was doing it was my own son was in a very inflammatory, reactive autoimmune state. So all my naturopathic tools didn't really work for me. So I wanted to see what I could do for him. So I tried them myself. And immediately, if you imagine color being stress, the world went black and white. I could see the same problems that I was dealing with, but nothing could stress me out. And honestly, in a sense, that feeling hasn't left me since I did my first worm dose 6 years ago. All right, salt. I got to hit you with the salt thing. Salt warnings are all wrong. Salt is not dangerous. We are all salt deficient. Okay, by going down in salt, you increase your insulin resistance. It does not benefit you from heart disease. It increases death from heart failure. It raises your cholesterol. I talked to two of you about that today. It increases death from diabetes. It is the stupidest thing you can do, is go low salt. This is the salt I use. Again, you can always get a copy of this from me. Redmond salt. It's from in Utah, where there was a salt lake, and then a million years ago it got sealed over. So it's got no toxins in it. Great people are salt deficient. Most people need 3 to 4 grams, desire at least 3 to 4 grams per day. But the kidneys can excrete 10 times more salt than we eat. They are salt excreting machines. They excrete they handle a pound of salt filtration a day going through your circulation. A teaspoon or 2 that you add is not going to really throw them off in any way. Insects, nuts high. Aldosterone stores salt. Cortisol releases salt. Average Roman had like 25 grams a day. 18th century had 70. 16th century Sweden had 60. And heart disease did not relate at all to salt consumption. Your kidneys process a pound of salt per day. A teaspoon is too high, and yet we process that amount to our kidneys every minute. It makes no sense, every 5 minutes. Supports all aspects of salt. Japan has the highest salt intake, one of the longest lived people. This is what's in sea salt, okay? Actually, it's this. We're not talking table salt here. We're not talking sodium. There's minerals, half of these you can't even get in a supplement, and they're all essential. You need more salt. Now, of course, monitor your blood pressure. 1 out of 200 people will react, but that's something else going on. We use salt for acne. We couldn't figure out why, actually, but my toughest acne case responded beautifully to salt. Well, here's what happens. Spirulactone, which is an acne drug for those of you that have experienced acne, it blocks aldosterone. And aldosterone is released when you don't have enough salt to conserve salt. So basically, if you give yourself enough salt, you lower your aldosterone, and you can treat your acne. And we have like hundreds of people that have just gone on salt for their acne. Grandparents, you can really help your grandkids with this little trick. I use, the one thing sea salt doesn't have a lot of is potassium, so I'll use this this is a salt substitute. teaspoon of salt, sea salt, a teaspoon of this, potassium, and a teaspoon of baking soda in a gallon of water. I drink a gallon per day. All right, IgG and IgA testing. Okay, this is kind of results that come back. I'm just going to scroll through these. Anxiety, cancer, high IgG, colitis, high IgG. These are different foods we test. Arthritis, that's why I have to do both. This person had no IgG and all this in the IgA. This is a healthy person in the practice. This is a sick person in the practice. We test every different lab. These guys sent me a sample kit. I did it. I find this a little more clear. But people come up to me, hey, have you ever tried this test? Yeah, I tried it with a dozen people last year. 3 ways to react to foods: immediate, short-term, and intense. That's IgE. That's the kid with peanut allergies. We don't test that. If you eat peanuts and you can't breathe, stop eating peanuts. There's 2 hidden food allergens. One takes a week to show up, a couple weeks, days. One takes a month to show up. Okay, that's the IgA and the IgG. Those are called the hidden food allergens. You'll see letters going back 15 years from people that had all their symptoms resolved by doing this. That's why I don't consider this medicine. It doesn't have to be medicine. We're just detectives together. If you have a bad allergen, your immune system has to make a choice. Do I fight these things, cancer, bacteria, or viruses, or do I fight the food allergen? It doesn't really know which to do. So it may just go to the food allergen, and that's the association between cancer and food allergies, or chronic infections and food allergies. Gluten reactions are a small part of the ways to react to gluten. This study shows that. For years, gluten reactivity or sensitivity was poo-pooed, Oh yeah, you think you're sensitive to that gluten, what a fad. Well, they just studied and they found most people have an inflammatory reaction to gluten. These are all the different parts that are in a gluten molecule. So what should we eat? I don't know. I try every experimental diet on myself, and I usually feel miserable. Just keep in mind, what we can eat, of all the things in nature, plants, we can only eat a small percentage. So maybe your percentage is going to be a little smaller. But what can we eat? 1% of we can't eat any grass, we can't eat any trees, we can't eat any leaves, we can't eat most things. Most animals we can't eat. So we're already very narrow in what things we can eat and digest. So doing the food test, it's a way to find out if you need to be a little narrower. The Vikings apparently ate the best diet. But we're eating meat 3.4 billion years ago, so I don't always think I know people want to be healthier by going vegetarian. I don't know if it is healthy for a lot of my patients. I do see some people that don't do well on it. That kind of depends more on the blood type. Here's meat 5,000 years ago. Milk, thousands of years. So my goal is to have people eat as much as they can, as long as they're not creating antibodies to it. Vikings had the best diet. It looks like they ate everything and they ate a lot of it. Something weird here, seal meat apparently is one of the best forms of everything, This is a seal. Seal is the only thing that maybe we're eating a lot of seals. I don't know. Maybe we'll do the seal diet next year. I don't know. It's a little rough, but I have one of the seal skin coat. I think that's maybe evil, but they sound really good. Anyway, different blood types in different parts of the world might have influenced what we eat and how we eat. I think the best strategy now, eliminate your allergens, of course, because that's what you're making antibodies to. And then eat a blood type compatible diet. For myself, I know, as an A, the 2 main avoids are red meat and tomatoes. So what did I do for my kind of losing weight thing? I'm I don't need to eat every meal, we eat too much, so I'm I'll have turkey meatballs, but of course I had to have them with pasta sauce, red sauce. And I did that for weeks. And finally I'm my GI's not feeling good, and I gotta even talk in a week. How am I gonna talk to these people when I'm not feeling good? I'm I guess I should take my blood type avoid out. Of course, next day I felt better, So I really think that this does have an influence. I think the main avoids for B are chicken and gluten. The main avoids for O, I think gluten is the main one for O. For A's, it's tomatoes. And A, B's, you're screwed. I don't know. ABs are only 5% of the population. They're like 50% of my practice. They just torture you. Because it's a new blood type. That never existed. That wasn't evolutionary. That was because A's met B's and, oh, duh. That's how you get an AB. Everything else was 100,000 years in the making. Foods can heal illness. This is just different papaya enzymes. Like, okay. Mushrooms, I'll just blow through it. If you have depression or anxiety severe, like you can't work, it's affecting your life, you have to go get mushrooms. You can't do it in the US. I don't think it's illegal to recommend people travel to do it where it's legal. Go travel where it's legal. It's most countries. Land of the free, I don't know, but we can't do mushrooms. But study after study, including severe depression, like you have 6 months to live, you're 40 years old, you have 3 young kids, take this, and the person's like, stuff happens. As opposed to can't get out of bed, shaking with fear day after day. I'd rather she then use her logic to, get Laetrile, get enzymes such. Anyway, study after study shows microdosing allows your brain to find new pathways. We get used to the pathways that allow us to survive, but we might not want to live like that. There's a difference between survival and enjoying your life. If you take LSD, mushrooms, whatever, it allows your brain to rewire and refunction and find new, shorter pathways, more efficient, more effective, more healing pathways for your brain to work. Even if your immune system's picking the wrong pathway. Dr. Weil, my son, I remember he told me, Dr. Weil talks about how he's severely allergic to cats. He did an LSD dose, and he had a cat experience in the experience of the LSD, and then he wasn't allergic after. So it could just be your immune system wiring, not your brain. And your brain's no different than your immune system anyway. Anyway, everything gets better on microdosing. You don't have to do full doses, you can do microdoses. Prescription drug dangers. Let me just say, no one here should be on a prescription drug. Now don't go off tomorrow, but we should talk, okay? There is no reason to use these drugs that are studied for months and you're using them for years. Absolutely no reason. Autoimmune diseases created by them. Conventional medicine needs to address its own problems, in my experience, and stop worrying about cannabis and whatever. 2,000 people per week die because of their properly prescribed drugs. Can you imagine? I mean, one person overdoses on some herb because they're doing something wacky, and it's like the end of the world. Dies from cannabis? 0. Dies from LSD, mushrooms, whatever? 0. How about we use those medicines first? This is a whole thing about the lies we're told about drugs. Okay, I broke this down. Cipro, Tamiflu. I said, let me take one drug and really research it and see if the research supports its use. No. In fact, what I found was they lied about this. They wouldn't release the information. They had to do a Freedom of Information Act. Then Cochrane, which is the main research body, withdraws support for Roche's study of Tamiflu. It is insane to take this stuff. They write about it, how it was. Billions spent on it. They had to do a Freedom of Information request. Drug companies do not have to publish all their research data. They're doing some ad campaign for it here. Money wasted around the world on it. Hidden data. The main conclusion of the study, when they finally got it, it went from 7 days to 6.3 days. Crazy. And it can create all kind of mental illness. Like 2% of people have schizophrenic reactions to this drug. Drug studies flawed and misleading. 20,000 people with severe neuropsychiatric symptoms. For what benefit? No benefit. So anyway, there's no reason for anyone here to be on a drug. You want to fight the flu, take triple flu defense. For some reason, stupidly, I never mentioned my own product in my talk. That's like humble bumble stuff. I'm not doing that. My partner, she's the CEO of the company, Judy, has worked for a decade to get this formula perfect. We change it every season. This is what I use for my family. This is what I use for my patients. Eric's out there. I told him to bring a bunch. No one should leave here this season without taking that home. Okay? This has been in development for 20 years. It was 10 years of me using it before I was lucky enough to have Judy come and start a company where I didn't have to spend months making it during flu season.
What's in it?
Homeopathic medicines only. And it's changed each season depending on the symptom picture we see. Now, if you don't know what homeopathy is, that is the safest form of medicine you can use. It's microdosing, and it's parts per million. Tylenol is mechanized. So some people say, well, homeopathy, we don't know how it works. Guess what? We don't know how it works. Tylenol. Like, give me a break, you know? Pregnancy, severe damage in pregnancy taking Tylenol. When did your doctor ever tell you this? All right, hypertension, I got a whole explanation of why. Hypertension meds, because they decrease the oxygen saturation of the hard parts, like the prostate, breast tissue, thyroid, brain, they increase the risk of cancer. We don't need to have anyone on hypertension meds. That is all very solvable. All right, let me just see. Death by prescription, I told you that. Just some random slides. You have natural antibiotics that can be provided. Homeopathy is now one of the main forms of medicine in Switzerland. If you keep exercising, you maintain the same muscle density as young people. This is one thing I like to use for my weight loss to maintain my muscle, a venotropin, which is a deer antler extract. Deer antler has a lot of growth hormones. Testing we can do, or I recommend, I might refer out for this, mold toxicity. This is one patient who's the nicest guy on the planet and the most difficult case. He tested for mold, and that's what he tested. Nicholas, if you're here, you've given me many sleepless nights. Neurotransmitter testing, just to see what your brain is doing. This is great. Cortisol patterns. No link between testosterone and prostate cancer. For years, they kept men. And this is 2011, 10 years ago. I still have guys come in and say, oh, my doctor won't give me testosterone because of prostate. It's like, we use maca for hormone support, a bunch of different species, some particularly for men to raise their testosterone. Manuka honey is a great antibiotic. And this guy wrote this book. He's a Russian guy, so he's got a lot of attitude and a lot of knowledge. But he just talks about colonoscopies being completely not worth it and very dangerous. Guys, just do the basic stuff. Push-up handles, pull-up handles. This is my house. Those are my handles. Like, we just have to do the basic maintenance stuff. And with that said, we'll do a Q&A. Can I get those mics? Can I get those mics turned on? And there should be a mic there. Turn it on.
Yeah.
And you can line up behind the mics. We'll do it that way.
Can we turn the lights on?
Oh yeah, we'll throw some lights on too. Switch in the back. Switch in the back over there. Come on, you guys. Up and at 'em. Stretch your legs.
Yep.
That's music. Turn that off. Off. Turn it completely the other way. Those white things are not the lights. Turn the music off. Turn the music off. Thank you, Danielle. Okay, sir, let's start you off. Mic there, mic back there.
When I was given my blood test earlier, I talked to you about being on a statin, and you were going to talk about the potentials of ways for individuals to get off of statins. I just want to know if you could
Okay, well,
address that.
mainly is, thank you very much. So why do we get high blood pressure? Can you even open the shades a little bit, Chris? Someone in the shades?
High cholesterol.
High cholesterol, thank you. So you know how a cactus is, right? It's protecting itself from the environment. Guys, this is Q&A session. You want to get up and leave, you're not going to insult me. I'll go on as long as you have questions. Basically, it gets waxy to protect itself from the environment. Well, your cells are the same. So if you dehydrate your cells, they're going to respond by protecting themselves. They're going to protect themselves by depositing fat in the cell wall. That's cholesterol. So the first thing you have to do is hydrate yourself. Now, not hydrate yourself with water, because water is empty. There's nowhere in nature we get water. Everything's from a river, from a well, from the ocean. Our ancestors cooked in brine. It's 27 teaspoons of salt per gallon. Did you ever brine a turkey? It's awesome. Soak it in a big tub. Put as much salt as it'll take. Soak it for 2 days. It's awesome. That's what our ancestors did. So, teaspoon per gallon of sea salt. Teaspoon of potassium salt. Teaspoon of baking soda. Per gallon per day. Your cells will respond by not protecting themselves from dehydration as much. Thank you for that question, because I know I asked you to bring it up. Anyone else with a question? The mics are back there, guys. Line up behind the mics. Because otherwise... Oh, there you are. Go ahead, hit me. Can we lower that mic, staff? People? No, it's off.
All right, I'll yell.
Come on, guys. What's going on over here? Push the button on top. What am I paying you people for? Which I'm
Hello?
not paying.
Oh, hi.
Which I'm not paying.
What is a microdose of a magic mushroom?
What quantity?
Yeah.
I don't know. Mr. Google probably knows. I mean, 1/10 of a regular dose. 1/10 of a
Which is
regular
what, a regular dose?
An eighth.
Like